Hi everyone, I'm Kira McClelland. I am from Women's Markets at Westpac, and thank you so much for coordinating this, Maggie, on behalf of Ruby Connection. It's such a privilege to be part of the conversation today, and a huge thank you to our panelists, Erin and Shanti, for taking time out of your day to share your thoughts with us today. Bit of context, so Maggie and I met at Vogue Codes last year, and we shared such a great passion for supporting women through our respective projects, whether that's PepTalkHer or Ruby Connection, and we thought there was just such a beautiful alignment there. And Ruby Connection, it's Westpac's online community for women. It's the first of its kind to be set up by an Aussie bank, where it's a central platform for like-minded women to come together and share their stories, think about their financial futures, and really join each other and empower each other. So it's such a great network, and we're really proud of it. So whether you're starting your financial journey, or you're part of an established family, or you're actively investing, it's a place to come and find out a little bit more about how to get ahead and support other women. So the conversation today ties in so nicely with our joint areas of focus. I think in times like this, it's never been more important to really track your achievements, whether that's in your work, your business, your professional life, or your finances. I think it really is what drives and what motivates us, and it's having a list of things we've done. So thanks for joining us today. Super excited to kick this session off, and join us over at Ruby. We're on all social platforms, and of course a newsletter too, so feel free to subscribe. And let's get started, Maggie.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Kira. We're really grateful that Ruby Connection and Westpac have partnered with us today for this session on tracking your achievements. Now, I just want to, my name is Maggie Palmer. I'm the founder of PepTalkHer, a tech company on a mission to close the gender pay gap. And today we've got two amazing panelists joining us. Erin Evans, who is the founder and director of an amazing recruiting company called FireSoft People. You'll be able to see the link in the chat. And also Shanti, who's the Deputy Legal Counsel from Optus, is joining us, who she and I were connected a couple of months ago. She's an amazing woman, a huge advocate for women in the workforce, and I'm just delighted to have the two of them joining us today to talk about achievement tracking and how that can help supercharge your career. So if you have questions, we are all open books. Please send them through on the chat, and we will make sure that we get to them. We've got half an hour together, so we're going to kick it off. Ladies, I just want to put it to the two of you, Erin and Shanti, to start with. Why do you think it's important in your career to keep track of the stuff that you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
I think, first of all, Maggie, it's important for yourself. Forget anyone else. It is important for yourself and your own sense of worth. And I think as you get caught up just in everyday stuff that's life, you forget. You forget how well you've done. You forget you forget your own shadow. We talk about a leadership shadow, but you forget just your own personal shadow and the difference that you have made to other people or the other items or other issues. So try and do it for yourself before anyone else. I have a very rudimentary method where I have just a folder in my inbox, and I have cheekily named it Post Gilead out of Handmaid's Tale, because there's some times where I think the environment I'm working in is so constrained that it feels like Gilead. So it's my post-Gilead folder, and there are thoughts or things that I do that I just drag in there for myself. And I'm very lucky as well that I chair the board of an all-girls school in Adelaide where I went to, and every year when I have to give the chair's address, I go back to my post-Gilead folder and I just trawl through it to remind myself of all the things that's happened to me and that I have affected during the year. So it is that sort of rudimentary and that basic. But before you do it for anybody else, do it for yourself.
I love that. I love that it's so important to keep in mind that this is for you and for your own level of self-worth, and just to remind yourself of the things that you've been doing throughout the year. The idea of an email inbox where you keep everything is very interesting to me, because actually when we were researching building the PepTalkHer app, that's one of the things that came up in conversations with women. So Erin, I'm interested, for you, is that something that you do? Do you do the email inbox, keep track? Do you have an old school notepad? What do you do?
Yeah, so look, I'm a Google girl through and through. I am a Google Sheets, Google, pretty much the whole Google suite. So I've got a lot of Google Docs, which kind of are foldered, and they're just an achievements folder. I think off the back of PepTalkHer, which I've actually used as well, it is such a good way to just have everything in one spot. Just as Shanti said, we forget, and we forget so quickly how much impact we have, not only on our work life, but on our personal lives, on our family lives, on our friend lives. We, often do things in life that someone will tap you on the shoulder and go, wow, that was incredible. And you go, oh yeah, I did that. And I think, to Shanti's point again, it's psychological. On, with a recruitment lens, which of course is sort of where I'm coming from, that only fuels your ability to stand back and go, actually, you know what, I am really valuable. I know what I'm worth. I know how to quantify that. I know then how I can add value to not only my current organization, but a future organization. And that's an incredibly powerful thing. And I think what will help us, drive future performance is actually knowing where we've come from, and then knowing where we want to go. So for me, I'm a Google girl. I do have it all stored in the cloud. Being a technology recruitment company, I kind of have to do the tech thing. But it's brilliant. And I think, you have those days where you think, God, I'm not doing anything right. You open that up and you go, yeah, actually, okay, I'm not so horrible, and I will get this together, and I will pull it in line. So yeah, I mean, PepTalkHer does the same thing, and it will shoot, little notifications of things that you've done. So again, huge advocate for that as well.
It's an interesting time, isn't it? Because obviously everyone's stressed. The employment climate is changing and shifting, and a lot of people have either had their hours cut back, they've potentially been laid off, they're worried they might be being laid off, or they're in the hunt for a new job. So Erin, I want to throw this to you first because of your recruitment background. For people who have a bit of anxiety right now or fear about job hunting and about how they can put their best foot forward in terms of bringing those successes from their previous roles into the best way to advocate for a new role, what advice do you have as a recruiter for people who are kind of looking for a role right now on the call?
Look, I think there's two components to that, and something that I'm a huge, huge advocate for is figure out what you love to do and start there. So I think, when someone's coming to us and saying, hey, look, I'm really not happy what I'm doing. I feel like I'm not achieving anything. Maybe I don't have purpose. I don't have clear direction. We then throw it back and say, okay, well, what is it that you do love about your current job? What is it that you have achieved? What is it that you are enjoying? And we start with that core component first. And so I think for anyone that's looking for a new career, there's never been a more beautiful time than right now to redesign that pathway and to figure that out. And often what we do is we first look backwards and we look at where we've come from, and we cherry pick those little things that either have stuck out as achievements or things that we've really loved doing. And often when you love doing something, you are actually achieving as well. And so that will help to create a little bit more clarity. So then once they've decided, okay, actually I do really love my job, but these components I don't love, then we look forward and we say, okay, well, in the next iteration of your career, what is it that you actually need to have demonstrated? And sometimes there's a gap. Sometimes the requirement for the next step up or step sideways or step back is actually slightly different than what they've done. So then you map that and you say, okay, what kind of achievements do you actually need to demonstrate? And then you start looking for opportunities to achieve those things. So you sort of fill that gap. Then you look forward and you say, okay, well, what is it that I need to come forward with in an interview, present exceptionally well, and tell the story of how I've achieved these things to then land myself into the next position. So it's kind of a case of, past state, current state, future state, and finding what you love as kind of a breadcrumb trail through your achievement.
I love that idea of the past, current, and future, and also in terms of framing the achievements you've had in the past and more recently and what you'll be able to bring to the business in the future. I love that as a framework. Shanti, you manage teams and you've hired a lot of people throughout your career. What do you look for in terms of that story or those breadcrumbs of achievements throughout someone's career? What are you looking for in your role at Optus?
I might just answer that separately, Maggie. Just to follow up from what Erin said as well, what I would encourage everybody in the call is to be bold. Before you may not know what you love. Certainly when I left law school, I went into private practice, and telecommunications was not anything on my radar of what I might love. Thousands of years later, I do love it. But I would say to people, be bold. I think some things, and certainly with interviewing a lot of people and a lot of women, I'm not sure that we come out as bold as our self-worth equates to. And I would say also, apart from being bold, don't tie your self-worth just to your job. So your self-worth and your skills come from an array of things. You will bring skills because you look after elderly grandparents. You will bring skills because you volunteer in an animal shelter. Don't tie your self-worth just to your skills that are all revolve around a JD or your job description. Really dig deep and think about all those other things that you do as part of who you are that bring skills to a job. Certainly, you know, and relating to your specific question, Maggie, when I interview people, and I've done a series of interviews just at the moment, we're looking for a lawyer based in Canberra. And what has struck me with the people that are really high end is they are lawyers, certainly, and black letter lawyers, and that's tick because that's what you need to be, but they are musicians, photographers, they are part of the Canberra Music Centre, they are a range of things, they are parents. There are so many other things that add to who they are and how attractive they are as a candidate that goes well beyond just that quite narrow perspective of our JD, if you like.
So that more rounded understanding.
Absolutely, that more, and I don't think we think about that well enough, because I think as women we tend to put ourselves down. You know, and I see a lot of people that are quite narrow, and if they don't tick all the boxes of what the JD says, then they're a little bit nervous. Where I think my, you know, really strong advice is be bold. And it's only something I'm learning maybe in the last 5 years or so. It's taken me just as long as anybody else. But I really think it's such an important thing, you know.
Well, it's funny you say that, actually, because, you know, again, the reason that I started this company was because I noticed that so many of my friends had these amazing careers, were bringing so much value to businesses in a creative sense or in a revenue sense, but they actually didn't know how awesome they were. Like, I knew as their friends, I was like, man, anyone would be lucky to hire you. But then I'd talk to them before a job interview and they'd be like, oh, I don't know. Like, they wouldn't really believe in themselves. And so I think if we think about the analogy of, like, if I wanted to get massive biceps at the gym, I'd have to, like, get those kettlebells or whatever they're called and, like, do this every day, right? And get a massive muscle through small incremental change. And I think it's similar to what you both touched on in that mindset sense of, like, if you're not tracking on a regular basis the achievements you're making, be they at home, be they at work, it's really easy to kind of get 2 months, 3 months, 12 months down the track and you're like, I don't know what I did yesterday, let alone 6 months ago, you know? So I think having that regularity is really valuable, not just for your career, but to your point, Shanti, for your mindset as well. And I think we underestimate that. Sometimes I used to think it was a bit woo-woo. I was like, oh, nah, like, that's not a thing. But increasingly, I'm realizing it really is.
We have, so at Optus, I sponsor the Optus Business, the graduate program. And so I have about 10 Optus Business grads I love dearly, and I share them with a couple of other gradvocates. And of course, we've had to induct our grads all virtually. They haven't been to our 6,000 person campus. They haven't met their manager in person. But what we're trying to do is to just bring this cohort together. And one of the gradvocates is a fantastic piano player. You wouldn't know it. Her specialist at work is to be a data analyst, but she's a brilliant pianist. And every Friday, she plays the piano for the grads. You know, and it's just a wonderful way to ease it to the weekend. But again, it's an achievement. It's something she brings that we all look forward to, which is completely outside what she does for work. So every Friday, we have a 10, 15-minute concert. We love it, and we float off into our weekend.
I wish we could have concerts with my team. We're all virtual. Us are that musically inclined, I don't think. We've got a great question that's just come through, and that is that, like, if you are tracking those achievements, like for yourself, for your future career self, or because, you know, you're on the hunt for a new job, how often should you be doing that? Erin, is there sort of a cadence that you recommend for candidates who are coming to you looking for a new role? Is there sort of advice that you give them in that realm?
Yeah, completely. I think, so just quickly, actually, to comment on Shanti's comment about women being bold, there were some really interesting statistics that came out of LinkedIn last year, and it was just around women and men and the difference in terms of how they go about applying for jobs. And Maggie, you may or may not have seen this, but women are 20% less likely to apply to the jobs that men would otherwise be applying for. And it comes down to skill relevancy, and it comes down to self-worth and self-assessment. And often women do not put themselves out there to say, actually, no, I can do that. Or I can do everything around it that would extrapolate to allow me to do that exact thing. And so men are more likely to do that. So just a quick comment on that. That is not just a feel, Shanti, that is a stat, that is truth. And it's something to just keep in the back of your mind as well when we talk about being bold. It's so important. To then go into the interview side of things, that same concept really applies here. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to sound like I'm just bragging about myself in an interview and it's all about me. And how do I approach that from a constructive angle and a humble angle while still delivering the message? And really what it comes down to is it's about being relevant. So the conversation in an interview will flow, and it will flow from topic to topic. And I think it's about being relevant around the topics that you're talking about and really coming up with, concise ability to tell a story about a time that you achieved X, Y, and Z based on that topic. And the only way that you're going to be able to have that flow in the type of an interview is to know your achievements and to know them really, really well. To practice telling the story of those achievements with somebody you love or somebody that you know. We often say, do it in front of a video, do a selfie video. That adds the extra amount of pressure. And then you can watch it back and you can watch your body language and the way you deliver it and the words that you use. One of the things that we talk a lot about for people who are particularly hung up about feeling like they're bragging is we actually say, use the language that will come about from a humble angle. I have been really lucky to deliver X, Y, and Z. I am so grateful for the opportunity to have been in a team that was able to achieve this, this, and this. I was really, I was well rewarded for what I did here, and I'm grateful for that. So coming from an angle of gratitude often gives people a bit of a sense of, more comfortability in delivering that message. I'm all for just saying it as it is, but I think that helps people. And I know, Maggie, you probably feel the same way, but I do think that sometimes helps navigate that conversation to bring people into a bit more of a comfortable state of bragging in that way. But as long as it's relevant, go for your life, but know your story.
Yeah, and it is just getting comfortable with selling yourself, right? And I think you're one, Erin, which is the specifics are really important. So don't just say, I increased revenue. Like if you increase revenue 10 grand, that's kind of cool. But if you increase revenue 10 million, that's a very different story. And so you want to be very clear on those metrics. And Erin, you mentioned something that I know, Shanti, is important to you. And we've actually had a question from someone as well saying, other than your specific KPIs of your job, what else should you be tracking? And how do you best communicate that to your boss? Because right now, not everyone's necessarily going to be getting a raise or a promotion, but how can you still make sure that your boss is aware of the great work that you're doing? And I know, Shanti, for you, something that's been important is when you're putting those achievements forward is being conscious of your manager's position too. Do you want to just share that story with the group as well?
I've got a couple of things. I can be, to be quite directive, what I would say to people is you should be having a cadence of a one-on-one with your manager every month. I'm guessing that's more or less the norm. And I don't think, including myself, we use that very effectively. We use that as a general, how's it going? Have you got a lot on? But really, that's entirely in your control to start putting together your achievements, inside work, outside work, and use that. So when it comes to the pay raise time, the promotion time, it is not a surprise to your boss or your manager that in fact you want to put yourself forward. Because if you have had those regular cadence, one-on-ones and you've been quite structured, people need to be managed up. Don't take that, that's not a small thing at all. Make sure that you're doing that. Make sure you're doing that in a smart goals way. So you've got things that are measurable, they're achievable, and you can show you've done it. The other thing I would say is lean into other things. There's a whole lot of other things in your organisation that they just want smart women who can multitask, because we have that in our DNA anyway, to be able to lean into. And it's not always about your job or the money or those quite narrow goals. So in terms of Maggie's question, also understand that when you go to your boss, so I was seconded to the general counsel role at Optus, and I had the team of 40 lawyers. And I have to look across the entire team as to relativities, as to one person who thinks they're fantastic, but really there's another person in another siloed team who is more fantastic, and I only have one option of putting that up. I had, a couple of years ago, I had one of my direct reports say to me, when we did our review, and he was doing a brilliant job based in Brisbane, and he was really just it was the Commonwealth Games, and what he had performed with the Commonwealth Games was he had done all of the contracts for the Commonwealth Games without needing any external legal advice or support. And that was some incredible number, yeah. But he was so self-aware that I had to look across the team that he actually said to me, I know you've got to look across the team. And I know I've done really well, but if there's someone else that's done even better, then you should put them up. And I can understand that. And as a manager, it was just so much relief, because you don't have all of these people coming at you that don't have that self-awareness and don't have that ability to put themselves in your shoes. So I think to have that self-awareness also is just it gives your manager some relief. But before all of that, though, I think we don't use our one-on-ones effectively to manage up. We're a bit all casual and laissez-faire about them, and it's a good coffee catch-up.
Right, and sort of the question that came earlier as to how often should you track those achievements, it sounds like from what you're saying, at a bare minimum, it should be monthly.
Yeah, I think it's monthly.
A scheduled one-on-one, or whether you proactively ask for that time with your manager just to kind of check in. Because again, if we think about human psychology, if you're meeting with someone every month for 12 months and then you ask for a raise, that's probably a little easier, a little more palatable than if you just don't talk to them much about your success for 10 or 11 months. And then out of the blue, you say, hey, by the way, I'm amazing, give me a raise or a promotion or whatever. So I think if we can, to use your breadcrumb analogy, Erin, I think that's really, really important. So at a bare minimum once a month, the PepTalkHer app, we send you prompts 3 times a week. You get 1 motivational quote a week and then 2 reminders. So, I mean, that's best case scenario. I mean, ideally you do it every day, but life is life, and let's be realistic about these things. So I feel like a weekly, recording of your success is amazing, but monthly at a bare minimum. Now, we did a poll just to see how many of you are also using an email folder to track their achievements. So 32% of you do have an email folder. And interested to hear, maybe just put it in the chat about those of you who don't use an email folder. Are you like Erin? Are you a Google gal or guy? Or what are you doing to track them as well? We've got about 5 or 10 minutes left, so absolutely happy to take questions if people want to send them through in the chat. Just quickly, while we're waiting for those questions to come in, just any final practical, actionable tips, like the top 2 things that you think people can do tomorrow or today to help move the needle. Erin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, totally. I think it's about habits, and it's establishing habits. I think we all have achievements, and we can all sort of identify them and say, okay, these were the big ones. These are the big ones that we strove for a year. We all work towards them, and those will stand out. But it's about understanding that achievements can come in any shape and form, and they can come in, during the middle of a day when you haven't, maybe had enough sleep the last night, and you're trying to get something done, and then you achieve that. You may be ahead of schedule. Little things that pretty much add up to the big stuff. We all talk about big goals and then breaking those goals down. Every single one of those milestones along that sort of pathway towards your goal is actually an achievement. And it's about acknowledging those for what they are. So I think it's about getting a system that helps you track it and establishing that and committing to it, doing it for 2 weeks without fail, and really kind of getting real with yourself and saying, actually that is an achievement. Because I think we're too quick to say, oh no, that's not big enough. To Maggie's point, when friends go, holy crap, look what you did. And you're like, oh, what? That's exciting. These are the things that I think as women we need to acknowledge, and we need to sort of say, hey, look, yeah, that was hard. And yeah, I did achieve that. How fantastic. So, establishing that habit is huge for me.
Yeah, and having cheerleaders around you to help remember can be really valuable too. Shanti, what's your one top tip that you'd like people to walk away with?
So my one top tip is to really understand the business you're in. At Optus, we have something that's called an annual operating plan, and every year we put out our annual operating plan. And it doesn't matter where you are at Optus. I think it's really important that you understand your equivalent annual operating plan and understand your role in delivering that plan. even if it's the tiniest thing. Because then in terms of your achievement and your self-worth, if you know what you've done to make sure the entity you work for has moved the needle, it is a much easier conversation, and it makes you realise, it just supports your self-worth in that broader entity. I don't think anyone should go to work, and I had this conversation with the grads that, they're all super smart, they in these jobs, but being super smart and doing a good job is fine, but do they know why? Do you know why they're doing that job, and what they're doing? Do they know how that contributes to the broader picture?
And how that shifts Optus in terms.
I agree with Erin. It's nothing exciting. It's really just normal hard work, good habits, grit and grace is how I call it.
Grit and grace. I love that. And I'm also loving all these suggestions from people. So some people, Fatima says she tracks using an Excel spreadsheet in date order. Love it. Someone else uses Trello, which is also a really good one. Someone else uses the HR system. Kira's using the HR career achievement system, which is useful too. So it doesn't really matter. You can have an old school notebook. You can be a Google gal, as per Erin's suggestion. You can use the PepTalkHer app. It doesn't matter. It's just about having that system in place so there's that regularity. And I think the other thing is for people who don't know what to track, because some of you on the call may not be in a revenue generating function, right? So if you don't make sales, how do you work out exactly what you've contributed? So if you're a teacher, maybe you dealt with a challenging parent, or maybe you helped organize the cross country competition or whatever it is, or potentially you work in a creative role, but you organized the office holiday party and you negotiated a great deal at the bar. Like, that's not nothing, right? I'm not saying that it's changing the complete trajectory of the company, but all those small little things add up over time. If you didn't do that, someone else would have. If you didn't ask those questions or do those things, the company may have paid more money. So think about what are those small things that you do? Maybe you think they're small, but actually without them, the team or the business would be worse off without those things. So we're happy to take more questions. We're going to pop in the link to our amazing panelists, so you can connect with them if you like, or check out their amazing careers on LinkedIn, and I'll put in a link as well to the app. But final words from you, Shanti and Erin, on a habit or something that you've observed from someone who's worked with you or over your career that you were really impressed with, the way that they tracked their achievements. I know, Shanti, you've got a great example for this one.
So I worked, and this is again about managing up, Jane was in our team, and she was just superb. She had, as soon as I gave her KPIs, she had them plotted into a table. She met with me, would tell me how they were going to be measured and what difference they would make to the business. So I have adopted her template that I now use for my team, which is about 5 or 6 years old. Just before I go, just a quick, one of the questions was about using a picture on a CV, on your photo on the CV. And I know it's a very subjective thing. I definitely would use a photo on your CV, because invariably I'm going to go look you up on LinkedIn and then I'm going to meet you. So I've got no qualms.
Interesting. Erin, your take on the photo on the CV?
You know what? It's funny. I'm actually with Shanti on this. It's not done very often. It does often stand out. It is a little bit old school, but it's actually kind of coming back, which is really interesting. We're going to go look at you on LinkedIn. We're going to probably, yeah, 100%. So you may as well just kind of get that out there to begin with. It doesn't need to be a full page spread, but a photo is perfectly fine. A link to your LinkedIn, because we're going to do it anyway. Make it easy. Yeah, I'm all for it. Happy days.
That's really interesting. And for those of you who need to go, thank you for joining us. You can connect on LinkedIn, all of the things, rubyconnection.com.au and peptalkher.com. If you want to hang around for a couple more minutes, we're happy to stay. There was another question as well about resumes, thinking about the achievement tracking. How far back should you go on your resume? Like, if you've been in the industry 20 years, or 30 years, 40 years, if you like my mum, she turned 65 yesterday. Is she putting stuff from the 70s on her resume? What's going on there, Erin?
Yeah, no, look, I think the last 5 to 7 is absolutely fine. You can go as long as 10. Anything past that sort of 10-year mark, you can absolutely note it, but you don't need to go into the depth. You don't need to go into the responsibilities, the achievements, the bigger picture of the role. If you're in technology, maybe talk about some of the technologies you were exposed to. What that does is it helps create a picture of your career trajectory without getting into the too, nitty-gritty detail. So yeah, note it. Don't expand on it though. I'd say 10 years is probably as in depth as you want to go. Otherwise, you'll have a 10 to 15 page resume, which is not fun either.
Yeah. And Shanti, what about you? What's your expectation when people come in and interview you with your team? Like, what's your expectation from them in terms of tangible KPIs that they sort of attach to that achievement? Like, do you want them to give percentage year-on-year growth, number of cases they worked on? What are you looking for?
I've just done a series of interviews this week, and they've been so high level, and I have really honed in, because it's very topical at the moment, on their view of risk. And how does one really assess that, and how comfortable are they around that? So no, I can't give you a specific in what I hone in on. It's really on a case-by-case basis.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, we are going to wrap things up. I'm going to take one more question here. This is really great. So when you're in an interview, you've been tracking your achievements, you've been using the PepTalkHer app, you've been tracking it once a month. So you've got 30 things on your dossier of achievements. Now you're in an interview. You were laid off, but it's all good because Erin helped you get an interview. Now that you've got that interview, how do you translate those wins and those successes into a story? How do you make that kind of palatable? What advice do you give, Erin?
Yeah, look, I think it comes down to relevancy again. You know, you could sit there and tell this amazingly beautiful story, but if it's not relevant to the role or the business or the things that that business leader is looking for, it's kind of extra added confusion, and they struggle to cut to the point. You have to, I think, remember when a hiring manager is sitting in front of you, they are looking for something very specific in terms of, how do I solve a problem? And often that problem is there's a gap in the business, there's a talent gap, or there is too much work. So you have to identify what that is first. And I think that's about stepping back prior to the interview to assess what will they be looking for from me, and then curating your response to then address that, and address via a story. And when I say a story, it doesn't need to be like a 20-minute long, you know, beautifully created story. It's just what happened, what was the situation. So you would go back to the very standard STAR sort of response, you know, your situation, your timeline, the action you applied, and then the result. And as long as you kind of follow that STAR methodology in any way you can, but, you know, add some personality to it. Talk about how you felt. Talk about how others felt. Talk about what you received in terms of feedback. And then you can tell a story that solved a problem for a previous business that might then solve a problem for the future business. That is the best way to go about it.
I love that. I love that. Shanti, from your perspective, what are you looking for?
No, I just wanted to reiterate what Erin said about practicing. I cannot, that is so important. Practice, 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 practice. It's boring, it's dull, but by the time you get there, it'll be second nature. And it shows. It just shows so much.
It does. And added pressure of that camera perhaps, or even a loved one. You want to create a pressurized situation. Nobody's good under pressure naturally. You have to practice that, and you have to create that false sense of pressure, which, you know, often a selfie video or it adds that.
I do a video every week to the grads. I used to do it every week for the legal team as well, and it's just a roundup. It's 2 minutes. It's thought leadership. It's what's going on at Optus. And it takes me a couple of takes to do the stupid video, but I do it every week regardless. And I've been doing it for 2 years.
Well, that's also practice. Do you do that also to help build your muscle in terms of your presenting skills and the way you're perceived when other people are interacting with you? Is that part of it for you as well, Shanti?
It was part of it originally, but it really is just about connecting people.
I love that. I love that. And I think both of you have just touched on the idea of what you want to do in those practice questions, whether it's with your partner, your best mate, a colleague who you trust, your mum, your dad, whatever it is. You can practice with your dog if you like. That's fine. They won't talk back. But you really want them to ask you the tough questions and like the worst case scenario. Because if you prepare for the worst case scenario in the comfort of your own home, if you break down in tears, that's cool because no one's seeing it, right? And so then that way, when you're actually going into a situation with a board of interview, you know, a panel, or if you're interviewing a Shanti or Erin to see if you're a candidate for her recruiting firm, then, you know, you've already done the worst part of it. You've done your worst performance, and now this performance is going to be a lot better. So, you know, it's about exercising that muscle. Practice.
It's something that when I've talked to women generally about, you know, gender and diversity and how, because often I'm in a room where I am the only woman. I'm in technology. There's not as many women as there need to be. And people say, how do you cope with it? And I will always say that the thing is, you take gender off the table. And the way I take gender off the table is I'm the most prepared. You know, I've done hours of horrid, boring homework because I am a nerd.
Yeah.
But it doesn't worry me because I know if they ask me something, I will either, if I don't know, I'm happy to say I don't know, but more often than not,
There you go.
I'm prepared.
I love that. And we've just got one more final question. And this is really interesting. And I know, Shanti, you and I have spoken about this before. The question is, today we've spoken about, yes, you need to track your career achievements, but also there's merit in being clear and talking to your employer about your outside of work achievements. People have differing opinions on this. When I worked at the Financial Times, they didn't really want to know what you were doing outside of work. But Shanti, you really believe that.
Always.
Yeah. So this question is like, she's saying, it's a great question. Should I put my achievements outside of work on my CV? Because someone told her recently to remove it. So she's kind of a little bit confused. What do you recommend?
So I always like to see interests. And especially because I'm recruiting lawyers, I want to make sure you're human. I get the black letter law stuff, but I just want to make sure you're a person as well. And our team is such a great team. I think it's a trap because, you know, none of us ever want to sort of leave because people are so fantastic. But we're just all people and human. So I always, I put an incredible amount of weight on it, that you do something outside of work and that I'm not responsible in a way for your entire being because you're so wedded to Optus and to work.
What do you think, Erin? What do you hear from, because you recruit candidates into a lot of technical roles and a lot of big brands that we know right across Australia. What are those employers saying to you? What do they want to see?
Yeah, look, I think you have hit the nail on the head, whereas it probably even 10 years ago wasn't nearly as well received because they sort of just wanted to see the corporate version of you with your corporate mask and corporate sort of, persona. Whereas now we are bringing our whole selves to work. We are in our homes. I mean, particularly even more so now, you know, we have children running around the backyard. You can hear it's all, we are a human and we're holistic. And I think to Shanti's point, people are looking for well-rounded humans to work with. They want to be able to engage with them. They want to be able to have interesting conversations that are outside just the realms of work as well. It also shows that you have transferable skills that could be otherwise, you know, applied. Let's say you're really hardcore into sports and team sports. Great. Well, we know you're going to be probably a good team player in the corporate domain. And I think, you know, even going the next step, and some people, you know, for technology in my position, they get really involved in like codathons and hackathons and things that are, you know, not work, but they take their passion for coding into their personal life. That speaks wonders as well. So even if it isn't relevant, but if it is, great. Holistic humans are what we're going for now.
Really, really great advice. I love that. And I guess the other thing to the person who asked that great question, if you are concerned, you could also try and background some people at the company to get a sense of like, is it too soon to bring this up? You know, also, I guess the other question you need to ask yourself, if it's really important to you to bring your whole self to work and to be able to talk about those things, if the company you're interviewing at hates that, like maybe that's also something you need to consider. Is that going to be the best fit for you? But this has been a delightful conversation. We could talk for hours, but we're going to wrap it up because I know that time is precious and we really value your giving us your half-hour lunch break. So thank you. Massive thanks to Shanti from Optus and Erin from FireSoft people. Thank you so much for joining us. The links to their LinkedIn and their companies are in the chat. The links to download the PepTalkHer app are in the chat, and so is the Ruby Connection website, which is an amazing free resource. So if you're not already getting involved with that, I highly recommend it. They do amazing events. So once the curve flattens, hopefully sooner later, we're excited, Kira, to connect with you and the team again in person. But in the meantime, we're going to be connecting here virtually once a month. So we'll email you with some wrap-up points from this, and then we'll just kind of keep touch base with you once a month and let you know the topics and the panelists, and we'd be delighted for you to join us again. And if you enjoyed it, spread the word. If you hated it, let us know. We're all about the feedback. So thank you for joining us. Today's Westpac PepTalkHer Lunch and Learn on achievement tracking. We hope that you get that job, get that raise, get that promotion, and if nothing else, start building a achievement tracking habit. Thank you so much and have a great weekend, Friday. Thank goodness. See you soon. Thanks, everyone.